What if the most honest British war stories ever filmed weren't locked behind paywalls or hidden in dusty vaults? What if they were sitting there, free, waiting for you to press play? These films aren't loud. They don't chase glory. Halfway through this list, you'll realize something strange. These stories feel less like movies and more like memories Britain never fully talked about. And by the end, one title quietly rewrites what courage even means. Let's begin. Number 12, The Way Ahead, 1944. This isn't a story about heroes. It's a story about hesitation. The Way Ahead was made while the real conflict was still unfolding, and you can feel that urgency in every scene. Instead of confident soldiers, the film follows ordinary men pulled from everyday life and pushed into something they barely understand. They stumble, they complain, they get things wrong. And that honesty was the whole point. Directed by Carol Reed, the film quietly rejected polished patriotism. Training scenes drag on, orders feel confusing. Authority is questioned, not celebrated. At the time, that made officials uneasy. Some feared it showed weakness. Others understood it showed truth. The men on screen don't transform overnight. Courage arrives slowly, almost by accident. What gives the film its power is restraint. No sweeping speeches. No dramatic music pushing you to feel something. Just routine, fatigue, and small moments where character reveals itself. When leadership appears, it's calm, not theatrical. That made veterans later describe it as one of the most accurate portraits of early service life ever filmed. Watching it now feels intimate. You're not observing history from a distance. You're standing inside it, unsure, waiting, learning. And that's why it still works. Free to watch, quietly powerful, and refreshingly human, The Way Ahead reminds you that bravery often begins with doubt. Number 11, Ice Cold and Alex, 1958. This film isn't really about a drink, it's about holding on. Ice Cold and Alex follows a small group crossing the desert under pressure that never lets up. Heat presses down, tempers rise, trust erodes, and somewhere ahead is the promise of relief that feels almost imaginary. The journey becomes mental before it ever becomes physical. John Mills plays a leader worn thin, not broken, but close. Every decision feels heavier than the last. The desert itself becomes a character, silent and unforgiving. What makes the story gripping isn't danger, but uncertainty. One companion may not be who he seems. Doubt creeps in quietly, then refuses to leave. The production leaned into realism. Filming took place in real desert conditions. Exhaustion wasn't acted. It was lived. That authenticity bleeds through the screen. You feel the drag of time, the weight of silence between words. There's no rush here. The tension simmers. Audiences remember the ending, but the real impact is the journey. The film understands endurance not as strength, but as refusal to quit. When relief finally comes, it's earned, not celebrated. Watching it today, free and untouched by modern gloss, Ice Cold and Alex stands as a reminder that survival stories don't need noise. Sometimes all they need is patience, dust, and the will to keep moving. Number 10, Went the Day Well, 1942. This film starts polite. That's what makes it unsettling. Went the Day Well opens in a quiet English village where manners are everything and suspicion feels unnecessary. Then small details stop adding up. Smiles linger too long. Answers feel rehearsed. And suddenly, the ground beneath everyday life begins to crack. Released during the height of the conflict, this film dared to imagine danger arriving disguised as familiarity. That idea alone was bold. The story doesn't rely on spectacle. It relies on discomfort. The realization that safety can vanish without warning. What shocked audiences then still works now. Ordinary people are forced to act. There's no preparation montage, no transformation arc, just neighbors facing the unthinkable with whatever resolve they can find. The tone stays calm even as events spiral. That calmness makes everything hit harder. Officials worried it would frighten viewers. In reality, it respected them. The message wasn't panic, it was awareness. Stay alert. Don't assume. Courage can appear in unexpected hands. Today, watching it free online, Went the Day Well feels eerily modern. It proves tension doesn't need scale. Sometimes the quietest setting delivers the loudest warning. And once the film ends, that unease stays with you longer than any dramatic finale ever could. Number 9, The Cruel Sea, 1953. This isn't a story about triumph. It's about isolation. The Cruel Sea strips away romance and leaves only responsibility. Set aboard a small naval vessel, the film focuses on routine, waiting, and the emotional toll of constant alertness. Jack Hawkins delivers a performance defined by restraint. His captain carries every outcome silently. The sea dominates everything, endless, gray, indifferent. Days blur together. Decisions must be made quickly and consequences linger long after. What makes the film unforgettable is its refusal to comfort the viewer. There's no sense of clean resolution, just continuation. Released less than a decade after the events it portrays, the film felt raw to those who lived it. Some scenes were controversial for their honesty. Orders carry weight. Not all outcomes feel fair. The film acknowledges that service often demands choices that leave scars, even when done correctly. Filming in real conditions added texture you can't fake. Water slaps against metal. Wind cuts through dialogue. Silence stretches. Veterans later said this was the closest cinema ever came to capturing life at sea during that time. Watching it now, free and unfiltered, the cruel sea feels timeless. It doesn't ask for applause. It asks for understanding. And in doing so, it quietly earns respect. Number 8. The Hill, 1965. This is a war film with no battlefield. The Hill takes place inside a military holding camp where discipline replaces danger and pressure never relents. The title refers to a mound of sand that becomes a tool of control, a place where endurance is tested daily under relentless conditions. Sean Connery delivers one of his most grounded performances here. Gone is charm. What remains is defiance shaped by exhaustion. The conflict isn't external, it's personal. Authority versus dignity, order versus humanity. The film shocked audiences expecting familiar structure. There's no sense of adventure, just routine hardship and psychological strain. The environment itself feels oppressive. Heat hangs heavy, silence becomes loud. Every command feels like a challenge. Officials disliked the portrayal. It showed hierarchy without polish and obedience without comfort. That made it powerful. Director Sidney Lumet leaned into realism, refusing to soften edges. The result is a film that feels confrontational even now. Watching The Hill today, free and uncompromising, feels like stepping into a pressure chamber. It asks a hard question without raising its voice. How much can structure demand before it breaks the people inside it? Number 7. Tunes of Glory, 1960. This film turns pride into a pressure cooker. Tunes of Glory looks like a traditional military drama on the surface, but underneath it's a psychological duel. Set in a Scottish regiment after the fighting has ended, the story focuses on what happens when men built for conflict are asked to live without it. Alec Guinness delivers one of his most unsettling performances as a commander who thrives on noise, ritual, and authority. When a new officer arrives with a quieter style, the clash becomes inevitable. There are no grand set pieces here. The tension lives in rooms, glances, silences, and wounded egos. Guinness plays command like an addiction. He needs admiration the way others need air. John Mills, calm and controlled, becomes his mirror opposite. Their conflict feels less like rivalry and more like slow emotional erosion. At the time, officials were uncomfortable with how clearly the film exposed class division and leadership vanity. It suggested that tradition could rot from the inside. That idea hit close to home. Critics praised its bravery, even as some institutions quietly distanced themselves from it. Watching it now, free and untouched, Tunes of Glory feels sharp and modern. It's not about battles. It's about what happens when identity is tied too tightly to rank. And by the end, you realize the loudest victories often hide the deepest losses. Number 6. The Dam Busters, 1955. This is precision turned into obsession. The Dam Busters became famous for its technical achievement, but its real power lies in discipline and focus. The story follows a team tasked with an almost impossible mission that demands perfection. Every mistake matters. Every delay costs something. What made the film stand out was its seriousness. There's excitement, yes, but it's restrained. Pilots aren't portrayed as fearless icons. They're professionals under immense strain. Richard Todd brings quiet determination to his role, grounding the film in responsibility rather than bravado. Behind the scenes, authenticity ruled. Real aircraft were used. Veterans advised on details. The film moved carefully, respecting both process and consequence. That seriousness helped it connect with audiences who understood the cost of preparation long before results appeared. Later generations debated its tone, but its influence is undeniable. Nearly every air-focused war film borrowed something from it. The pacing, the build-up, the emphasis on teamwork over individual glory. Today, watching it free in restored quality, The Dam Busters feels like a masterclass in controlled tension. It shows how commitment, repetition, and belief can carry people through uncertainty. Not flashy, not sentimental, just precise, determined storytelling that still holds its shape. Number 5. The Colditz Story, 1955. This is patience as resistance. The Colditz story doesn't rush. It can't. The entire narrative is built on waiting, planning, and restraint. Set inside a heavily guarded castle, the film focuses on men who turn confinement into a long game of intellect and resolve. John Mills anchors the story with quiet leadership. His performance never reaches for drama. Instead, it lets routine do the work. Days repeat. Plans evolve slowly. Hope exists, but it's fragile and carefully protected. What separates this film from later escape stories is tone. There's no glamour. Every attempt feels costly. Every failure leaves a mark. The filmmakers leaned heavily on real accounts, and that authenticity gives the film its weight. Officials were cautious about revisiting these events so soon after they happened. Some wounds were still fresh, but survivors recognized the honesty. The film respected the mental toll of confinement without exaggeration. Watching it now, free and unchanged, the Colditz story feels almost meditative. It reminds you that strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet discipline, repeated daily, until opportunity finally appears. Number 4. The Desert Rats, 1953. This is exhaustion captured on film. The Desert Rats strips away spectacle and replaces it with weariness. Set in the harsh North African environment, the film follows troops pushed to their limits not by constant action, but by endless waiting and uncertainty. Richard Burton plays a reluctant leader, visibly worn down by responsibility. His performance is restrained, almost heavy. The men around him feel stretched thin, operating on habit more than confidence. The environment dominates everything: sand, heat, distance. The film faced criticism for its honesty. It didn't paint leadership as flawless or decisions as clean. That made it uncomfortable viewing for some at the time. Others recognized its accuracy. Production leaned into realism. Filming conditions were demanding, and that fatigue seeps into the performances. You believe these men are tired because they look it. Sound design emphasizes emptiness rather than action. Today, watching it free, The Desert Rats feels understated and powerful. It's a reminder that endurance is often about staying upright when motivation fades. No speeches, no triumph, just persistence, moment after moment. Number 3. In Which We Serve, 1942. This film feels like a nation holding its breath. In Which We Serve was created while uncertainty ruled daily life. Co-directed by Noel Coward and David Lean, it blends memory, duty, and loss into a single flowing narrative. The story moves between present danger and past moments, showing how service reaches far beyond uniforms. Coward's performance is measured and sincere. He plays leadership not as command, but as responsibility carried quietly. The film avoids spectacle, focusing instead on connection, families, routines, shared moments. Officials monitored every frame, but Coward fought for honesty. He believed people didn't need exaggeration, they needed recognition. The result is a film that feels intimate despite its scale. Watching it now, free and preserved, In Which We Serve still resonates. It doesn't ask for praise, it asks for remembrance. And in doing so, it becomes more than a film. It becomes a shared reflection. Number 2. The Small Back Room, 1949. This is a war film about what happens after the explosion. The small back room doesn't follow troops into battle. It follows the men who stay behind, quietly dismantling death one device at a time. Set in wartime Britain, the film centers on Sammy Rice, a brilliant but damaged bomb disposal expert whose work saves lives while slowly destroying his own. David Farrar plays Rice as sharp, bitter, and exhausted. He's missing a leg, haunted by failures, and drowning his nerves in alcohol. There's no inspirational arc here, no speeches about duty, just pressure that never lets up. Each unexploded bomb is a countdown, not only to physical danger, but to emotional collapse. What makes the film unsettling is how modern it feels. The real enemy isn't the device on the table. It's burnout, self-doubt, and the fear of being replaced. The famous dream sequence, surreal and oppressive, visualizes anxiety in a way few films dared at the time. It's not flashy. It's invasive. Officials were uneasy with its honesty. This wasn't the image of wartime competence they wanted highlighted, but technicians and veterans later praised it for telling a truth rarely shown. that courage doesn't always look noble. Sometimes it looks resentful, limping, and barely holding together. Watching it free today, the small back room feels uncomfortably intimate. It reframes heroism as something quiet and corrosive, not about victory, but about surviving the responsibility of keeping others alive, again and again, with no applause when it's over. Number 1. The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, 1943. This is the film Britain tried to silence. The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp doesn't attack tradition, it questions it. Released in the middle of conflict, it followed a British officer across decades, showing how honor, pride, and identity slowly drift out of sync with a changing world. Audiences expected celebration. What they got was reflection. Roger Livesey plays the central figure not as a villain, but as a man frozen in time. His beliefs once made sense. Now they feel fragile. Deborah Kerr appears in different forms throughout the story, symbolizing ideals that evolve while he struggles to keep up. Officials were furious. The film dared to show sympathy, doubt, and complexity when simple certainty was expected. Attempts were made to stop its release. Instead, it traveled beyond borders and found recognition elsewhere before being fully embraced at home. Visually bold and emotionally layered, the film refuses easy answers. It suggests that strength without adaptation becomes weakness. Watching it free today, fully restored, feels almost shocking. It's honest, gentle, and brave in a quiet way. Not a story about winning, but about understanding what must change to endure. So here's the question again. If these films are free, why do they feel so heavy? Because they don't sell comfort. They offer clarity. Each one strips away noise and leaves you alone with people making choices under pressure. If one of these stayed with you, say which one. Share this list with someone who thinks old films can't still speak. And subscribe, because the past doesn't disappear. It waits for someone willing to listen.